Hi everyone, I'm Angela and welcome to Crafting with Angela. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make an easy watercolour card. I will be using this stamp set from For the Love of Stamps. The details are in the box below, but it's a lovely floral bouquet with some sentiments. I will be stamping this initially in black ink and then we'll be coming over it with Versamark, because I will be embossing it with clear embossing powder over the top. I am then going to be using inks to watercolour. So I have Momento inks here. I have Lilac, Posies, Cottage, Ivy, Bamboo Leaves and Summer Sky. I will be using, because I'm embossing, I will be using, take it out of its storage bag. I will be using my embossing buddy. I have an acrylic block for putting the inks onto to use as a watercolour. I have a single simple paintbrush. I will be using a stamping platform to stamp the image to make sure I get the image exactly right. I will be stamping this onto a piece of just plain white cardstock, and I have a pre-cut card base that comes with an envelope. This is a shaped card base, just because it happens to be what I have handy in my stash, but any card base will work. And then I'm going to take some pink paper to put behind the image when we cut it out. So that's everything. The only other thing I'm going to use, I think, is I have a wooden board that I use when I watercolor and my ATG gun. So let's get started. I have my stamp set here and my stamp positioner. Any stamp positioner that you have will work. This is just what I have. This is quite a large stamp, so that's why I like to use it in a stamp positioner. Well, not just that reason, but also because it allows us to stamp it multiple times, which I think is important when you're using such a big stamp set, such a big stamp, because you really want to make sure that you're getting all the ink on there properly. So what I'm doing here is, normally I try and conserve as much paper as possible, but because this is going to be the centerpiece of the card, I'm just going to stick it sort of somewhere in the middle of the sheet there, just to make sure we have it stamped down. Press it into place. Okay. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my Tuxedo black and Momento ink. Okay. This ink pad is getting a bit used up, so I will probably have to come and re-ink it soon. I do have a press here that just allows me to really get on top of this and make sure all of it is pressed down. You don't want to be pressing too hard, but you do want to make sure that there's a consistent pressure across the whole thing. So there's the black ink. And what I'm going to do now, coming in with a cloth to take the rest of that black ink off that, because the next step is to come in with the Versamark. So my embossing buddy, first of all. I'm just coming all over this. Don't need to worry too much about drying time here, because the Versamark ink dries remarkably quickly. Just coming in with the Versamark ink now and making sure there's a good layer of it down. Again, coming in and pressing it down. And when I was pressing with the black, I really made sure to pay attention to the spots that didn't look quite like they were coming down easily, to make sure that we get embossing powder over this, because the embossing powder is the trick that's going to allow us to make sure we have everything perfect. The embossing powder is the part that's going to allow us to do the easy watercolouring. So I'm just checking to make sure I can see some embossing ink on that, and I'll take this out, and that's us done with the stamping, for the most part, we just have the sentiment to go, but we'll do that later. Whenever I do embossing, I always like to have a sheet of A4 printer paper below my work to allow me to catch the worst of the leftover embossing powder. So here we go, just making sure it catches on it all, giving it a tip, and again just making sure that there is embossing powder on all the parts with ink. I'm going to come in with my embossing tool and heat set it, and you'll see it turn shiny. So there we go, that's the embossing done. Now I have a wooden board. So there we go, that's the embossing done. Now I have a wooden board. So there we go, that's the embossing done. Now I have a wooden board. So there we go, that's the embossing done. Now I have a wooden board. So there we go, that's the embossing done. Now I have a wooden board. So there we go, that's the embossing done. Now I have, so just as a reminder, I have 4 ink colours here that I'm going to use to watercolour. I am going to use, you can have whatever palette you have, I just like using a block. And I have a very simple paintbrush, there's nothing special to this. I am not an artist in any way, and this is going to prove that to you. I just find it easy to do these kind of techniques. So you don't have to be a painter to be able to watercolour like this. I also have a spray bottle of water that I will use as I need. So I'm going to start with the flowers. And I find at times like this, it's helpful if you have the picture to keep it in front of you. So I don't know if you'll be able to see that off to the front, but I have it in front of me just so I can see exactly where I am stamping or where I'm colouring. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, come in, just wipe the ink onto that, and then at the other end of the board I just come in, oops, and spray some water. Sorry, for some reason, oh, my spray bottle was not wanting to work there. Okay, and all I'm going to do is take a bit of the water and a bit of the ink, and what we're looking for is to make it much more movable. Okay, and then coming in, and what I do initially is I just go over the entire floral image. At this stage I'm not worrying about the shading, the colour. This is just getting that initial cover down. This can be quite repetitive to watch, so what I'm going to do is I'll show you in detail on the first image, and then I will speed up through the remainder of the painting. But it's not, I don't want to cut any of it out, but equally there's only so many times you can see someone putting ink on a brush and putting it on. You will notice I have got some spots here that are darker than others. At this stage I am not worrying. Okay, I'm just making sure I'm using that lightish colour and coming in with the there's 3 flowers in this cluster, 3 open large flowers in this cluster. So all I'm doing at this point in time, and you don't have to worry about because you've clear embossed it, you don't need to worry about going outside the lines too much. Like, don't be going mad, but you can go through the easiest part of this and just make sure you're covering in flowers in the pink color. If nothing else, it will help you recognize which parts are flowers, which parts are leaves. Because sometimes when you're in that image, like that part I just colored, I know for a fact it's supposed to be sky. So we'll have to come back and fix that later, but that's the base color done on the first flowers. Okay, and all I'm going to do now is again more ink or water into the ink, but I'm going to try and get it that bit darker this time. So I'm taking up more of the ink, less of the water, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to put dark in the center. Centers of flowers darkest, and then under every leaf that you can easily see. So if you can see there's a line of a leaf there, we want to go in and just put a thin line of the darker color. We're not talking about massive a thick line. We're just wanting to say yes, we can tell this is lying on top of something else, and that's all a shadow is. It's just a way of saying this lies on top of something else. Okay, so and should be guided by the lines on the stamp. When you've got a stamp like this, anything that there's a line suggests that you should have a bit of shadow there, not massive, but artists have gone to a lot of trouble to create the stamp in the way they want it to look, so they have put these lines in. So if nothing else, if you're not aware of any other way of stamping, if you just put a bit of color along, extra color where those lines are, you're shading it the way the artist has said they wanted it shaded, and I think that really helps massively with some of these images. Just going to lightly go into the second flower, not too in depth. Don't worry about how dark you get your colour, because the colour is always going to fade back a bit. That's just the nature of it. I'm going to come in here, a bit more water. I'm going to do the buds now. All I'm going to do with the buds is give them an overall coating. Trying to ignore the green calyxy bits, so that the green bits at the bottom of the buds, if you can. Like I said, I'm not a painter. I do not hold my pen in the right directions. I do not do things particularly well, so I will make mistakes, I can tell you that now. For the buds, I'm just going to come in at the bottom and that one pencil line again in at the bud. You know yourself, if you ever looked at a bunch of flowers, the tighter the bud, the stronger the colour. So again, I'm just making sure that I have got this nicely coloured. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there. I don't think I want to do any more with the big flowers. There are some of these tiny, I don't know if you can see them here, here. These parts seem to be, I'm looking at the image on the stamp set, and they seem to be in the similar colour to the buds. So what I'm going to do now is come in, but I'll make this a much weaker colour. So again, adding a lot more water, a lot less ink, and all I'm going to do is come in and roughly try and colour these in with the pink. I'm just looking around now to see, I think everything that's left is, oh, there's a wee, everything else that's left is leaves, so I'm just looking to check. Okay, what I'm going to do now is clear up this ink. Okay, because we have the embossing powder there, we don't need to worry too much about moving between the different ink colours. It's not like proper watercolour where you have to make sure you've let it dry before you move on to the next colour. So here we go, there's my green. So I'm starting with the bamboo leaves. Now what I could do is just take a bit of the water there and do a bit more ink, and then if I wanted to, for some of these larger flowers, just come in and again using the lines that are already on the image. Okay, that's all the lighter green. I'm just going to wipe what's left of the lighter green there, but I'm going to keep the water. Now I'm coming in with my cottage ivy, which is a darker green, and we do not need that much of it. This is going to go onto the calyxes and the stems, okay? Just realised I've missed out a leaf. There's a leaf in there that I've missed out. Just going to come in. There's a couple of bits of spaces on those tiny bud stems that I have missed out. I'm just coming in with this darker green to kind of shade them in, because again, this is that idea that these are a bud stem, so there will be a bit of dark green behind them. I'll come in with the bamboo ink, tiny bit of it, find that stem, that leaf that I totally forgot about. It was hiding in the background there. Okay, just coming in with the right colour. And that is the image coloured. Wipe off the acrylic block, wipe off my brush. Now you'll notice we have a blue ink left, and there's nothing in this image that is actually blue, but what I'm going to do now is just use this. This is going to give the background. This is the part that's going to finish it off. So just pressing quite a bit of ink down here. This is Blue Summer Sky, which tells you exactly what I'm going to make it to be. And this is where we literally just go in. First of all, start on the inside of the image, so mixing up that colour and coming into these gaps in between the flowers and just filling them in the blue. This is the part where those bits that you've gone over the lines, if you have, like I have, are going to be not quite so noticeable because you're going to fill them in with the blue and it's just going to look like blue sky. Okay. If you're using an image like this, don't be scared to turn the page around to give yourself a better way of painting it. You don't always have to have it the right way up to get in there and get the ink on the page. I put my acrylic block back on the white card because I find that's the easiest way to see where the ink is, especially when you're dealing with something like a pale blue colour that can be quite difficult to see. So I've covered the whole image here in the blue. You can see that the flowers are now that bit more grounded. So what I'm going to do, just to finish it off, is to try and take it out a bit. We don't really, if you ever see images like this that have been watercolored, they haven't been, what's the word I'm looking for? They don't have a harsh line around them. You want them to just fade away into the background. that's the painting finished. Just drying on my mat and my brush. And now I am going to let that dry. It shouldn't take that long because it is on a on cardstock. It shouldn't take too long to dry. But you can see we're definitely seeing some depth in that image really easily. Like, I'm not a painter in the slightest. This was just a really good way of giving that bit of image depth. Now, if I look at the image that was on the back of the card, the only thing that I can see that is different is they have put a drop of yellow in the center of the open flowers. So let's have that dry to the side while we finish the rest of the card. So we have our card base here. Like I said, it is a shaped card base, but it doesn't have to be. It's just that's what works for me. It's about, if we take the outside edge of the image, it's about 6 by 8, the card base. What I am wanting to do is cut down a rectangle that's probably, let me just see this image. I'm probably going to cut this image down to about 4 1/4 by 5. 4 1/4 by 5. So if we cut a rectangle out of this 4 1/4 by 5 and we add 1/2 inch onto both, 4 1/4 by 5, 1/2 inch, 4 3/4 by 5 1/2. So 4, make sure we're on the right side here, 4 3/4 by 5 1/2, and that hopefully is going to sit nicely on here. I'm going to come in and just roughly cut that in half, keep that other piece for scrap. And then I said I was going to come in, like, so I want to take 1/2 inch off this, so this is 4 5/8. So if we take 1/2 inch off that, we're going to be 4 1/8. So 4 1/8 by 5. That's the size we want to do this. So the way I think to do this, first of all, cut down that. This is the longer side, so this is going to be 5. So I'm going to cut this down at 5. Let me see, 5 1/4. And then decide which side I want to take more off. And then this is going to be the 4 1/8. I'm going to cut it down to 4 1/2. So basically I have cut this down that bit bigger than I actually want it to be. Okay, we are going to cut it down again, but this is just so I can trim it down and get to the parts that I, make sure it's even, because if I look now, this is a much bigger gap on this side. So if I want to take that down there, that looks much more even on that side. And again, from the base, we're just cutting it down so we know we're getting the image, the size that we want in the place that we want. And that should fit, pick this piece up really nicely on that pink. It's really going to lift that image up. That's what I'm going to do with this. I'm going to find a scrap of that white card we just printed on, and we have a scrap of the pink card as well. I'm going to stamp this, and I think I want to stamp it in the pink ink. And I'm saying that because I think I'll use the same acrylic block, although really that's a much bigger block than we need. And what I'm going to do here, so I'm just inking up this stamp. I'm going to stamp it out twice, pressing down, giving the ink time to transfer from the stamp onto the paper. You don't need to press hard. The harder you press with a stamp like this, the thicker the lines will be and the less neat it'll look. Don't like cutting small pieces with the trimmer, but at the same point in time it helps if we know the shape, the size, because then we can make sure that we have the perfect layer for it. So I'm going to cut this 1 3/4 that way, and let's see, whatever this is this way. 1 1/8 that way, which I think is going to go really nicely here. So that was 1 3/4 by 1 1/8. Do I want it as thick? I don't know that I do want it as thick as that. I'm going to take this down to 2 inches by 1 3/8. That was me trying to work the maths out in my head to tell you what the dimension was, and that's a smaller size, and I think that works better. Let me just tidy up a bit. We're going to come in here, my ATG. You could use wet glue or double-sided tape, grit stick, whatever you want. This is light, so there's not much weight behind it. So really any form of glue will work here. Okay, make sure I haven't got any tape going over the edge. Layer this up and try and get it so it runs roughly evenly at all 4 sides. I'm going to do the same with the sentiment. There's always a problem with the ATG. If you want to try and put ATG tape on small bits, it always ends up being a bit difficult. Here we go. Let's try and get this nicely lined up on all sides. Okay, I think that's a really nice card. I think I'm going to keep it flat. This is probably going to go through the post, so I'm going to keep it flat. So I'm going to use ATG, but you could come in here and use foam tape if you wanted to raise it up and give it a bit more dimension. Okay. There's that part, and again with the sentiment. Okay, just making sure none of our tape's running over the edges. Do not accidentally set it down on the wrong part. You know, I was going to put it in the center, but I think I like it better over at that one side. I'm trying to think. Normally, you know me, I like to put something from the outside on the inside and on the envelope to tie it together. And what I'm wanting to see here is what images do we have. So I quite like those buds and that big flower. Let's see if we can do this. So what I'm doing here, coming in with the pink ink again, all I'm trying to do is ink up that one pink image and some of that background. Making sure I get the edges that I want. Then I'm going to come in with the cloth, turn it over. Well, come in with cloth and see if I can take the worst, any of the ink that's on that part there that I didn't want. See if we can get it off. Obviously we don't want to take too long about this because you don't want your ink to dry, but trick from a very long time ago. Just come in and try and just going to stamp that like that on that bottom corner. Oh, that's nice. Not as perfect. You know, we've got a bit more of a mess around the edge, but you know what? It definitely ties the card and envelope together. So now that we've shown we can do it, I'm going to do the same thing on the inside of the card. Let's set this on top of the envelope again, just so we've got a nice easy way of seeing it. Coming in around this image. Okay. And then looking to see where have we gone too far over on, using a tissue as best we can to take those extra edges off. You could, if you had an ink dauber, you could come in with it instead and use it to color. I don't have a pink ink dauber, but it is something you could consider. Just breathing on the stamp to re-moisten the ink, and then just coming in to kind of put that image in there. And I think that looks good. It's not perfect, like I said. You could come in with a brush if you want it and try and turn it into a bit of a watercolor. What I like is just the fact that it's tying the front image with the outside image, and that's the easy watercolor card completed.